Welcome to the Social Mission Revolution.
Each week we explore some of the greatest undertold stories of businesses and everyday people who are making their ultimate impact on the world through social mission. This is Social Mission Revolution,
And this is your host, Andrea Putting. Welcome to Social Mission Revolution, and today my guest is Manuel, and he is the founder of Growing with Gratitude, which is an exciting idea, isn't it? We all want to grow a little bit and have more gratitude, so put them together and we've got Growing with Gratitude. Awesome stuff. So welcome, Ash.
Thanks, Andrea. Thanks for having me on your show. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And so, I like to start with a difficult question. I don't do small talk. So, Ash, if there was just one thing for you to fight for, what would that be?
Well, that's actually a very easy question for me to answer. So, a lot of my work that I do is in schools, and just like a specialist lesson that they do, like physical education, most schools have a PE lesson. My goal that I'd love to fight for is to make positive education or well-being one of those compulsory subjects like PE, where a specialist teacher actually teaches it to students. I think that's one of the most important things that can change in education for sure.
Fantastic. Yeah, there's so much that's missing in the education system, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. I mean, coming from a teaching background myself, I think I've seen, I guess, just we all have our own beliefs and what we think needs to improve, and that's just something that I've really seen from a learning experience, but also the younger generation coming through, that it's something that can definitely benefit them, learning skills about not only being grateful, but about being kind, empathetic, serving others, and reflecting on the good things that happen. I think they're all skills that young people in particular can benefit from, but also I think they're more what's a good word to say it, more malleable, or their brains can be developed and molded and more influenced at a younger age. And if they can pick up some of these skills that they get taught from a younger age, that can help them overcome challenges coming from a place, for example, being grateful, it's only going to help them, but also create a better world as well.
Yeah, and you do see that a lot, that that's lacking in a lot of people, isn't it?
Yeah, just not kids, but definitely adults as well. It's one of those things that I guess if you haven't come across the power of being grateful yourself, a lot of people know what it is, but it's a lot different when you actually practice and actually do it. It's like learning a skill in a sport. The more we practice, the better we get at it. And what I've found personally is that the more I practice over a long period of time now, if I'm having a bit of a bad day, I find it a lot easier to see things from a more positive point of view, coming from a place of being grateful. And it's a lot easier to use your self-talk, as I said, to reframe things and use, reflect on the good things that you do have and the people in your lives that you're grateful for and the opportunities that we have. And it does become a lot easier to see those things from a more positive point of view. And it does help overcome certain challenges that we have as well. And I've personally experienced it. There's a lot of research around that as well.
Yeah, there is a lot. So tell us a little bit about what Growing with Gratitude, you've kind of opened the door anyway. So what is Growing with Gratitude actually doing? What's it about?
Yeah, so it's about, it started out as a primary school program, which it predominantly still is. So as I mentioned before, my background is a primary school teacher. And I actually learned some skills. I'll give you a quick background story. So I actually learned some skills about or the power of being grateful in a bit of an unusual way. So I was actually looking into property investing. I really enjoyed teaching, but I thought maybe there's an opportunity to, there's more to life than just, being told you have to be at school at a certain time, you can leave at a certain time. I guess I'm more about thinking about living on your terms, lifestyle kind of thing. So I looked into property investing and discovered that all these property investors, or successful ones that I was looking into, mentioned about how this thing about their happiness led to their success, but they also talked about this thing about being grateful led to their success. And I didn't really get the connection between all that at the time. And so that really piqued my interest. So I started to really investigate it and discovered there was a whole science behind it. And there was a few researchers that had researched that the benefit of it. And one of the things was that gratitude can, I guess, help you overcome challenges. It can also increase your happiness. But I still didn't quite understand it. So they suggested some activities to try. And obviously the one that week is quite common, 3 things you're grateful for each day. That's a good activity to start with. But over time, it does get a bit repetitive and probably loses its, I guess, the benefit, because it does become a bit of a chore and
it does.
boring. Yeah, basically. But it's a good start. It's a good start. So I started to do that, and then once it got a bit boring, I found other ways to still practice. Now, what I found I was able to do was, if I was having a bit of a bad day, as I said before, I was able to start to see things from a more positive point of view more than I had. So I'll just give you an example. So in my head, I wouldn't say this out loud, but using my self-talk, I'd say to myself, look, today's just been a bad day. Like, things haven't gone my way. A few people at work just rubbed me up the wrong way. But do you know what? I'm actually going home. I've got food to eat. I've got a family. I've got a home to go home to. If I actually think about it and put it in perspective, it's not actually that bad. So that's one of the skills that I learned. And I thought, well, hang on, I've learned these skills as an adult. What if I learned them as a kid? Things could have been, I could have overcome some challenges as a teenager that we'll go through. Even, I use the power of being grateful to overcome challenges as an adult as well. But learning as a kid, I think, would have been highly beneficial personally. And at the time, our school was also looking for positive education / wellbeing programs to implement at our school. And this is going back to about 2013.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, what if I combine what I know as a teacher with what I've learned from personal experience and embedded in my life? And that's how it started. So it started as a side project in start of 2014 and 15 for 2 years. And eventually got to a stage at the start of 2016 where I left teaching to do Growing with Gratitude full time. So it's not just about being grateful. I call it the 5 habits of happiness that we implement in the classroom. So it's about being grateful. So the 5 habits are gratitude, kindness, empathy, positive reflection. So thinking about the good things that happen, and service. So doing things for other people without necessarily expecting anything in return. And the great thing about those 5 skills is that we can actually practice them in the same way. We practice an instrument or practice a skill in a sport. The more we practice, obviously, the better we get. So the theory is that we help the teachers teach these skills to students, and then the more they practice, if they are having a bit of a bad day, model to them how they can use, for example, being grateful to see things from a more positive point of view to help overcome challenges that may come up in their lives. So things could be really good, but the key is to actually have a consistent practice. So when you are having a bad day, or you might be going through a tough period in your life, hopefully you've got the skills to call on that slowly can bring you back to a more neutral or positive frame of mind.
Yeah, that's so important to give children those skills in that, especially if you give it to them when they're young in primary school. Then when they get to high school and they're going through those crazy teenage years and trying to discover themselves, they've got that solid foundation that's going to allow them that help them get through those difficult times.
Totally. That's exactly right. So, I mean, I think as teenage years can be very tricky. So, as I said, as you said as well, if we can teach them those skills from a young age, hopefully that does give them a strong base to help overcome challenges in teenage years. But also as an adult, like I learned these skills as an adult, and I said I wish I learned them as a student, or as a more child. But anyway, it's something. I always say it doesn't matter if you're a 3-year-old or a 103-year-old. We can all benefit from these skills of being grateful and empathy and kindness, except how we teach it depends on who we're talking to. So start out as primary school, but also do work with high schools, also teachers, but also a bit of corporate as well. So showing corporates and leaders and teams how they can incorporate these skills into their teams in the corporate world or the workplace as well, because there's a lot of research out there that a lot of people don't feel valued in the workplace, and
That's right.
Workplace bullying does happen, unfortunately.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, empathy is a massive thing when it comes to that. So if we can teach empathy, and I know that was a big thing at the moment within the politics about, I think one of the politicians who's been in the news recently is getting empathy lessons. So it's certainly a really important skill to learn about being grateful and empathy as well, and all the other skills I mentioned.
Yeah, there's a program, I think it's in Germany, I'm not sure, somewhere in Europe, where they take a baby into schools and sit with young children and teach them empathy by watching this child grow and trying to helps them to create empathy with this child, and thinking about what is it that this child needs and what is it that they're wanting to do and explore, rather than taking control, because it's easy to take control of a baby, whereas teaching them that you don't do that. You try to feel into what they're doing. So it's a powerful exercise that I've seen definitely some videos on it, and it's just amazing what is possible to teach children that we don't really think about. Yeah,
absolutely. No, and you're right. Like it's I think, and there has been the original research about like being grateful and empathy. There's not much actually. It's more it's more been on adults, and there's a bit of I'm not sure exactly the right word, but there was a bit of conjecture, I guess, about whether gratitude does have a positive benefit on young people. It may only have a really strong benefit when they're older, but from what I've seen, if we can start them at a young age, there is definitely benefits to it. And actually, I think it's important to test what you do. So I'm actually a PhD student from the University of South Australia is actually running her thesis, or doing a test, or what do you call it?
Study.
Study. A mental blank. A study on my program and the impact it can have on kids, and writing a thesis about it. So hopefully that'll come back with some things that are working, and also what can be improved. So obviously you always want to improve what you do, but hopefully it will come back with some kind of proof that, or evidence that the way that we do it does have some positive impacts as well.
That's fantastic. That'll be great material for you to have to prove what you're doing.
Yep.
So your five keys, what can't you call them, but the 5 things.
Yeah.
So gratitude, empathy, kindness, something else, and service. What was the other one?
Positive reflection.
Positive reflection. Awesome. So taking time to stop and think about yourself and how you feel. So I see so much value in all of those 5. My favorite is service. I believe strongly in service, because that's what the social mission revolution is all about, it being in service to other people. And by doing that, what I find, because there's all this research on this as well, but what I find is that lifts people's spirits. It helps them to feel more valued and valuable in the world. And as you mentioned about people not feeling valued in the workplace, it's when people find this act of service outside of their everyday. So when it's incorporated as part of business, then they're able to find a sense of value in the world. So it's this important thing to encourage children to do. How can you serve others? So I have this real thing about people say about paying it forward, or because it's like, well, if I pay it forward, then I get something back. And it's like, no. If I'm giving back, then that means that I have to have received first. No. Let's just give service.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's good to give.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you say that, because the service part of the program we do, particularly in primary schools, is first of all the kids serving around home. So doing things around the house to help out. So I always ask, who does things around the house to help out? And most of them put up their hand, and then who gets pocket money to do it? and probably half to 3/4 of the kids put their hand up. And that's okay. That might be a little, there's benefit in that as well, with like doing a little part-time job around the home to help out. But I do explain that, okay, well, what home service is about in this case is about doing things around the house without expecting anything in return.
And without being asked.
And without being asked, exactly. So we have a brainstorm about what they could do to help out around the home. There's lots of ideas, and then we challenge them at the end of that session to say, okay, well, it's okay to talk about it, but what's the best thing? And you always get one student who gets it, and they say, actually do it. Exactly. So it's okay to talk about it, but doing it is the best thing. So the challenge is that they go home, not necessarily be asked to do it. They just go and do it because it's a nice thing to do. It's a great habit to get into, to doing things for other people. And if they can do that, if we can teach young people to that concept at a young age, then again, hopefully the next generation coming through will be service-minded. And as you say, just doing things because for other people, or serving not other people necessarily, but could be animals, for example, or could be anything. But it's creating that next generation of service-minded people without expecting anything in return. And then we also talk about where else can they serve. So obviously at home is a good place to start, that's particularly for youngsters. And then at school, and if they play at sports club as they get older, and the wider community. So there's different opportunities, and just opening their eyes to that way of thinking as well is such an important thing. And I mean, I started doing volunteering as an adult, just once a month to get just really exactly what you're saying before, like just to give back to like the world, really, just give, because there's a really good quote, and I don't even, do you know what, I'm not going to butcher this, but something like it's a Muhammad Ali quote. It's something like service to others is the rent that you pay for life on earth. Like, it's not exactly that, but it's that concept. But it's a really good quote to think about. And it's been such a powerful thing. I've been doing it for about 5 or 6 years now. Once a month it's called Fred's Van, which pretty much is like a soup kitchen concept. But it's they're not necessarily homeless people who come, but people who do a bit at risk and do it a bit rough. But such a good feeling, and it's a really good group of volunteers, and we get in there, help out, have a bit of fun together, and it's a really positive thing to do in the community. I wish I started to do it when I was younger, but it's a great. I'll keep on saying it, but it's a really good thing to teach young people as well.
Yeah, because the research shows that people who volunteer have longer life, they have happier life, and they have greater friendships.
I'll just add one thing to that. I read a book, The Book of Joy by the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and a really interesting concept of service in that they talk about is if you're going through a really tough time, like with depression or whatever it might be. Like, sometimes we all go through those stages, some more significantly than others. But one thing they spoke about, the power of service, is that it takes the mind off you, and onto something else. So that's a really good way of alleviating, I guess, a negative frame of mind or even a depression in yourself, is through service, as I said, because the theory is that it takes the mind off yourself and onto something else bigger than yourself. And it's exactly right. It's a really good way to look at it as well.
Yeah, and that's what I've found in my own experience, and I do talk about that a little bit from time to time, where being from a state of depression, the one thing that was how I lifted myself out of it was by focusing on other people and being of service. And you think of all the figures of depression, even in our country, it's over 1 million a year, people of just adults and their children. You know, if we can just turn our thoughts to something else, something bigger than ourselves, we start to feel good about ourselves and being involved with other people.
And just add one thing on that, it's exactly right. The only person who can do it is ourselves. Yeah. So it's about having that self-awareness about, okay, well, I'm going through a bit of a rough time at the moment. Psychologists can give me advice, family can give me advice, but the only person who can do it is yourself. And that's about taking ownership. It's like self-awareness, I think, is the first step, understanding that maybe that you're not in a good place.
Yeah.
Second step is taking ownership of that and actually doing something about it. And one way that you can do something about it is serving others, for sure. But the only person who can actually do it is yourself. Whether we like it or not, it's a fact.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I see from when I'm listening to you about teaching young children to have these skills as they grow up, and then you mentioned about how people in the workplace aren't feeling valued. I just see this correlation of how things can change in the world from what you're doing. So if young children are learning and growing and developing with this spirit of gratitude and kindness and compassion and empathy and service, that as they become adults, then the workplaces where they are going to be completely different to what they are now. This idea of workplace bullying will not be there. This thoughts of people going to work and not feeling valued won't be there, because people understand how to serve themselves by being grateful.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's talking about those skills I mentioned, but I think particularly in that, empathy is a massive thing.
Yes.
So there's a great concept by Simon Sinek. I think a lot of people are familiar with his theory, originally starting with the Start With Why, but in his book, it's called Leaders Eat Last. He talks about this thing about the circle of safety, and particularly how everyone wants to, it's fair to say that everybody wants to go to their workplace and be at a safe and a fun
Absolutely.
and happy place to be. Now, to get everyone in that circle that everyone wants to belong, or everyone wants to be, is about everyone wants to belong and everyone wants to be happy there. But that comes through empathy for each other, understanding that we're all in the same boat. We want to be happy at the workplace. Now, if you're not in a circle of safety, there's a fair chance that you feel like you don't belong. You feel at risk. You might feel in danger. You might feel a whole lot of different negative emotions. And that's what you're talking about, how, and also part of that is not being valued. But if we can put ourselves in each other's situation and understand, okay, well, we all want to be happy at work. Well, let's treat each other kindly. Let's value each other. And that doesn't, I mean, obviously, if you've got leadership thinking like that, it does help, but it doesn't mean that, it doesn't matter where you are in the so-called pecking order of a workplace. You can do your part to put yourself in other people's situation and do your best to make it an enjoyable place for everyone or people around you to be, for sure. But definitely empathy is the key for that, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's such an important aspect of it. For me, I put it in the ABC that every one of us needs acceptance, belonging, and the opportunity to contribute. And when we have that, we all find what we need, which is really about everything that I do is about that. And my starting with chocolate and coffee breaks is that opportunity for people to sit down and discover that little bit of empathy, to walk in someone else's shoes. I have a mentor who has this great analogy, and he's Manish and he's in India. But his analogy, that story that somebody else had told him, was that about, we want to walk in someone else's shoes, and somebody said to him about, can you walk in my shoes? And he went to take off his shoes to put on the other person's shoes, and he said, no, you've left leaving your shoes on. Can you walk in my shoes when you're leaving your shoes on? So we have to let go of who we are so that we can walk in someone else's shoes.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a good story and a good analogy too.
Yes. So where do you go from here? Well, people are listening to this story. What is it that they can do?
So, well, I think the way that I started, and if you're looking for a practice about being grateful or reflecting on the good things that happen, the way I started was get out a journal or any book. It was actually just an old notebook, kept it next to my bed. And before I went to bed, I'd start writing 3 things I was grateful for. Now, as I said, over time, that did get boring, but I think it's a really good place to start.
Yeah.
but also be bits when you're writing down what you're grateful for, instead of just saying family, write down specifically what you're grateful for about your family. So it could be Sunday hikes together as a family. And I think that opens up, I guess, our way of thinking to more of those experiences as well that we can be grateful for.
And we can feel those.
Yeah, exactly.
We really feel those experiences.
So I think it's about being more specific, but also think about 3 areas. I like to think when talking about grateful or being grateful, the people in our lives that we can be grateful for is one. The things in our life, like, for example, some of those simple things like having a bed to sleep in, having food to eat, those kind of things. And then the opportunities that we have. So that could be the opportunity to go to a workplace, or if you're a young person, the opportunity to go to school, things like that, or opportunity to get invited to a party, whatever it might be. So people in your life, the things, and the opportunities. And that's a good starting place. If you do one of each and be specific, that's a really good place to start. After that, I sort of got a bit bored of that. So I started to write down 3 ways that I helped other people, so in a way of service, and also 3 ways that I helped myself. So 3 ways that I could have, or one way that I could have helped myself is, for example, went to the gym, read a book, ate a healthy meal. So helped me become, I guess, a better person and improve myself. But also, if you're thinking about helping others, it could be, it's just so simple. Like one of the habits that I got into is just got a cup of coffee here, but if you've got a cup of coffee at a cafe, take it back to the counter on the way out as a way of helping someone else. So that it could be just as simple as that, writing that down. I took my cup back to the cafe, and just reflect on what you do for other people. And it's a really good way to reflect on, at the end of the day, what you did for others. And that's another idea. And another one that I'll give you is just spend a minute or 2 just writing the best part about your day as well. It could be the best part about my day today was getting up early and going to the gym. It put me in a great mood, and it set me up for the rest of the day. And that's about 3 or 4 lines, but it's reflecting on the good things. And the reason why that is that we're wired to focus on the negatives. So, but then again, there's research that suggests that we can train our brains to focus on the good things, but it does take practice. And one way we can practice is reflecting on the best part of our day. So you could have 10 great things that happen and 1 not so good. And as humans, we tend to focus on that one thing.
So good.
But it's the practice of reflecting on the good things. So that's another one as well. But you don't have to do all 3 at once, but maybe spaced out over a month, trying each and seeing what works for you. Because what might work for me might not work for you, but keep trying things that help you reflect on the good things. There's a lot of, if you Google, so much out there that you could find as well. Do a search and find what works for you. But I just recommend that people just do a regular practice, because it certainly is powerful thing to do.
And what's one thing that, as parents or grandparents, that we can do to help young children to get into this power of gratitude?
Well, I think it's consistent practice. So, but with kids and even adults, it's variety. So there are a lot of different ways we can practice to be grateful, like having a journal and writing something you're grateful for. But having a gratitude jar, for example, was a really good way. So just a jar, label it gratitude, have some bits of paper next to it, and you write something down on a piece of paper that you can be grateful for, drop in the jar. Really good activity to do with the family. But one of my favorite activities to practice gratitude at home it's called Stop, Think, Appreciate. So stop is have a look around your home. Sorry, stop is just stop. Think is have a think about around your home, what you can be grateful for. And then once you identify some actual things, just appreciate it. And the way that you can do that is grab I'm just looking around me, I don't have them, but grab any old sticker label. It could be a Post-it note, it could be like a sticker dot. And then each family member puts their label on something in the home that they're grateful for. So, for example, put it on the fridge, because that identifies that we're grateful for having a fridge to keep our food cool. On our bed. So we've got a bed to sleep in. Now, the idea is that you keep that Post-it note or that dot on there for a while, because when you see it, It's just that split-second reminder
Yeah.
of a way to, that's right, we can be really grateful for having those things. And that's another way you can practice as well. Just a couple of different ways that is a good place to start.
Yeah, that sounds like it can be fun with small children to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So if you had one piece of advice of somebody who had something on their mind that they felt was really important, that was driving them, what would it be?
Well, I personally, this happened to me, so it's probably I can share my experience of what I did. So I was really passionate about combining my skills as a teacher with what I've learned as an adult. Now, the number one thing you can do is just start, like just whatever it is. So the first thing that I did was just start to write lesson content for practicing to be grateful, practicing positive reflection skills, kindness skills, but writing lessons about it. So that's how I started. So whatever relates to you is just the key to start. It doesn't matter where you start, because to be honest, the path that you go down originally, you might not end up where it is, but at least you start and you work out your path along the way.
Yeah, you let it grow.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the key things is do something every day. Now, one of the best books I ever read was called The Slight Edge by a guy called Jeff Olson, and Compound Effect by I forgot his name, but The Compound Effect is another book, very similar theory. So basically they talk about doing something every day that will get you closer to where you want to be. Now, it doesn't have to be hours and hours. So if you're a full-time worker, it could be 5, 10, 15 minutes a day. Or some days it might be 5 minutes, some might be an hour. But it's about consistent action over time that will get to where you want to go. And if it means that much to you, you'll do it. You'll find time to do it. And if you don't, well, maybe it's not really something you're passionate about. So that's my advice.
Yeah, great advice there. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you about your programs or wants to find what you're doing,
absolutely.
How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the website is growingwithgratitude.com.au. There's all the all different types of programs and more information about what we do. Personally, feel free to email. I've got an info@growingwithgratitude.com.au email that comes straight through to me. So more than happy to for people to reach out if they like and start a conversation. Fantastic.
So I'm sure that there are people who want to get in touch with you because it's a great idea, but great concept, and I know that you'll be making a massive difference to the lives of children and their families.
Yeah, no, thanks, Andrea. Appreciate that, and I appreciate you having me on today.
Thank you. I really appreciate you being here. It's been great to have this chat with you.
Pleasure.
And that's all I have time for today on the Social Mission Revolution, and we'll be back next time with another Social Mission Revolutionist. This has been the Social Mission Revolution with Andrea Putting. Join me again next week when we'll speak to another Social Mission Revolutionist who will inspire you on your journey to making your ultimate impact on the world.